Hello people, in this video I'm going to show you all how to make a Raspberry Pi hole ad blocker, which is a DNS level ad blocker, to understand how an ad blocker works and what this ad blocker does. Skip to the following part. I'll get straight to the installation right now. So first thing we need to do is we go to the Pi hole website, that is piehole.net, and it will guide you to their GitHub page. Now you have a lot of different methods for installing, but we'll be using the simple one command method. So by the way, update your Raspberry Pi by using the sudo apt-get update and sudo apt-get upgrade commands. I have already updated, so I won't do that. Paste the command in here and it will install this. Now it will take a bit to install, so stay calm. So now is the interactive part. So this installer will transform your device into an ad blocker. Sure, enter. It's open source. It needs a static IP. You can manually set a static IP from your Raspberry Pi and your router, or either one of them is fine. I'll be using the Google DNS as my upstream DNS provider. Pi-hole relies on third-party lists. I'll just use the default list that is given. So click on enter. I want IPv6 and IPv4 ad blocks, so I'll click on OK. Don't do any changes. That's my IP address, so I'll click on yes, and it's again warning you about the IP conflict, but do get a static IP for your Raspberry Pi on your router. Do you wish to install the web admin? Yes, I do wish to. You cannot select this option, but I do recommend. It's gonna install few more dependencies to help the web interface to work properly. I click on yes, and I do want to log queries, and privacy mode, I'll go with the default one, that is show everything. Now installation is completed, and you can access the web interface at this IP address, and you do have to take a note of this password. So what I'll do is I'll just copy the password. This is for the web interface. Note it down actually on your machine, yeah, so because it will be used later. And okay, so the setup part is done on the Raspberry Pi. Now we have to go to the admin page, and quickly before going to the admin page, I'll show you the before and after results. So let's go to speedtest.net and see if we have any ads showing up there right now. As you can see, there is no ad blocker right now, so it's full of ads. And we'll also go to ndtv.com, just because these are a few websites that I know have a lot of advertisements, and it's gonna take some time, but yeah, there you go, the advertisements are in now. So now what you have to do is you open your router's admin page. For me it is 192.168.1.1. for you it might be different. And now this is the TP-Link router, by the way. Every router will have different configs and different workarounds. What we have to do now is we have to change the DNS address from our router to use our Raspberry Pi as a DNS server. How do you find your Raspberry Pi's IP? It was given there during installation. One more way is you can go to the wired or wireless clients. In whichever way you have connected your Raspberry Pi, it will be listed there. My IP address is 192.168.115. Now I'll go to advanced network, and here I can change my primary and secondary DNS. Now I will set that as my Raspberry Pi's IP, which is 192.168.1.115. Same with the secondary DNS. You can leave this out, but I'll still fill it up. Oops. Yeah, now that is done. Save DNS in your router's admin page. I would recommend you to change the password by using this command and enter a new password, because the ones that Pi-hole generates, that's too weird. Now you can go on your site, let us say speed test. There you go, you don't have any ads. If in case it does not work, you can try restarting your router, like rebooting your router and rebooting your Raspberry Pi. I'm sure it will work then. If it does not, then you can refer to the forums online. Yeah, I'll go to NDTV again. So as you can see, the advertisements are blocked. This is not an advertisement, this is inbuilt, but the advertisements here, they are blocked. So yeah, and this will work over your entire network. So any device that is connected with your network will have blocked ads. Now I will show you the admin page quickly. The IP address of your Raspberry Pi /admin. There you go. This is the admin page. Now for more details you have to log in. So the password that we had created on our Raspberry Pi, we'll enter that, and yeah, there you go. You have all logs and whitelist, blacklist. You can whitelist websites, you can blacklist some websites manually, and yeah, that's that. So you'll be able to see all the queries and the queries blocked from your devices connected. Also, it won't block all of the ads. It will block a majority of the ads, but for example YouTube, it won't block YouTube ads, because YouTube routes its ads through its website itself. So if you end up putting YouTube on blacklist, you won't be able to use YouTube. Also, you can use the blacklist for other websites. For example, if you want to blacklist a certain website to your network, just add the website and the domain and add it to the blacklist. So that is that. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye. So in this part of the video, I'll be explaining how our DNS server actually works. What happens is that the client, that is us, for example, we open an app Y on our phone, and that app Y has a small area where it is showing an ad. So what it will do is it has a URL for the ad server. So it sends the request to the router that where is this ad, like give me the IP that corresponds to this URL. And then the router actually has we specified, if you remember, we specified the DNS server in our router, and the router forwards that request to that DNS server. DNS server is essentially a phone book where basically the name and number are written. It's kind of a dictionary. So this router sends request that give me, for example, pleaseadd.com. Give me the IP of that website, of that URL corresponding to that URL, and the DNS server looks up that URL and passes on the corresponding IP address. So what Pi-hole does is that it has a huge database of URLs. It has around 80,000 different URLs, which are already like into the blacklist. So it will detect any ads coming through. For example, if you are opening a certain app, a news app, and that news app is having uh, ad servers which have their URLs blacklisted in the DNS server, so in the Pi-hole DNS server. So what it will do is that the router will forward our request to a Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi will see whether the forwarded request is actually corresponding to an ad server. If it is corresponding to an ad server, then it will block it and send 000. So that is 0.0.0. So that's not an IP, and like that is an IP, but it doesn't correspond to any server, so it won't show any ads, right? And if it is not add URL, then what will happen is that it will forward the request. If you remember, we had selected Google DNS as our upstream DNS server. So if it is not an add URL and just a normal URL, so it will forward the request to Google DNS, and then Google will give out the IP address. Now what happens if you are not using Pi-hole? Same thing, the client is using app-y, and app-y sends a request for the IP of the server that corresponds to the URL, and the router forwards it. For example, if we are using Google's DNS, it is 8.8.8.8, and so basically that request will be forwarded to that server, and Google's DNS servers will look up the URL and just give the IP address. It doesn't matter if it is a non-add URL or it is a URL which corresponds to ad server, Google will still give the IP. So there will be no ad blocking and you'll be able to see the ads. So that is how Pi-hole works. It just basically, it's a hole, it's a black hole for ads. It will detect ads and cancel out the ads. Thank you.